Most any emergency that comes up, people stuck in the mud, people stuck in the sand, you can go both directions with that. Blizzard conditions, sometimes we have to go out and help deliver food and things, and water to people who are stranded because of snow or mud. It's very thick with mud when the snow finally does melt. We have people that are suicidal and are reaching out for help. And so this could come by way of texting me or calling me, and we go wherever we're needed. There's all kinds of trauma in this community. We have death around us at all times. So there's back-to-back funerals. So dealing with grief counseling, being there for people. I play the piano at most funerals that take place. Sometimes I'll play outside with a keyboard or in the church at the mission. It's a way of comforting the people to have the music being played. And then to just hold them while they grieve. In the Navajo way, once the person is buried, they're not allowed to cry anymore. The grieving process is not healthy. And especially with the children, many of them are not allowed to go to funerals. Parents are protecting them. And there's nobody to help them through the grieving process. And they carry that pain for years. And then through either abuse or grief, they end up starting to drink and using drugs. And in the boarding school, I'm aware of kids cutting as young as 5 years old. And I'm aware of them trying to commit suicide through hanging at 5 years old. And those are hard things to deal with. But they're ever present with us here. There's so much pain. And the enemy thinks he has hard rock. God has not forgotten Hard Rock. And the people that are here out in the middle of the reservation, nobody knows they're here. God does. And God has sent us here to share His love with them. And that's the very best that we can do, is share His love. And to share a relationship with Him through His Son, Jesus Christ. And this comes through relationships. We have many teams that want to just come out here and do Bible studies and BBS and so forth, and they don't understand what's going on here. And they make mistakes and cause more wounding sometimes. It takes relationship building. If a team plans to come here to minister, it has to be long-term. They have to be willing to come year after year and build those relationships. It's important to the Navajo people, and if you're not going to do it, they don't want you to come. So these facilities here, it's in preparation for the future. We do need more discipleship here. The men need training. They're the hardest ones to reach. And we've been trying by having, we've had a couple of events for just the young men. They don't come. We have 3 that are very faithful because they know the Lord, they love the Lord, and they want to learn, and they want to grow. We're pouring into them. They might be the ones then that can reach the others that won't come in. That's how I'm seeing it now. So it seems like just a few, but those few, just like with Jesus' disciples, I mean, they're going to get it done. And some of them are already going to other tribes on Native ministry teams to share their hope story, their testimony of what Jesus has done in their life. And they're very open with their pain when they do this, because the other Native people and all the other tribes relate to the same pain. And who better to reach them than the other Native people? So that's what we're doing. We're helping healing, bringing these kids through the healing process and preparing them, teaching them, discipling them, and just guiding them and sending them out wherever God leads. The opportunities that come up, just go. He's with you. For Robin, he was 13 when he accepted Christ as his Savior, and just knew in his heart that he was to be a missionary somewhere, and he did not know where. He envisioned building, yet he was an artist, and nobody in the family had any building trades at all. So that was kind of a weird thing. But anyways, he just held that in his heart. And for me, I was 5 when I knew that God had called me to be a missionary to the Native people. And so I held on to that as well, all the way up until about time to go to Bible school. And then it seemed like the Lord just gave me no peace about that, which didn't make any sense to me because I knew what my calling was. And so I worked for a year and ended up marrying Robin. And we knew we were both to be in missions, and because he knew my call was very specific, then he knew as well that this is what we were going to be doing one day, but we just didn't know when or where. And growing up, I always told the Lord I didn't want to live in the desert. I wanted to live in the east or in the north, anywhere there's a tribe with trees and lots of water. But that's not what God had planned. So he moved us gradually away from the Ohio area. After Robin and I married, we lived 3 years in Kentucky. Then there was a job opening as a laborer in construction. So he took the job, better income, and began to learn construction from the bottom up. And then we ended up moving back up into Ohio from Kentucky, lived there for 3 years. And then we just sensed in our heart God wanted to move us, but we didn't know where. We talked about Arizona, but it wasn't time yet. And then friends of ours said, hey, we're moving to San Antonio, Texas. And we just looked at each other and knew, well, that's where we're supposed to go. And we started a new life in Texas. And that journey was also part of our training for the mission field as we began to get to know the Hispanic people in the San Antonio area and learn to go cross-cultural because we had not had that experience before. And our girls especially needed that. Robin was able to use his artistic skills to start a sign business and do carpentry on the side. So whenever there was no business in signs, he could do carpentry and vice versa to keep us afloat. And we had a friend of ours lived in San Antonio said, I've met a missionary couple at church. They're going to be around for a year raising support. I'd like to bring them out to meet you guys and let them just rest in the country because that's where we were. We were out in the country. And so they came. Then they came more often. And then they finally said, what do you think God wants you to do with your skills and your talents? And we said, we're to be in Native ministry. But we don't know what tribe or where or when because neither of us had gone to Bible school. We had skills, but we didn't know how God would use those. And he said, apply, we need you. So we applied, and we came out for a visit, and were interviewed, and just knew in my heart when we came to Hard Rock that this is where God wanted us. And we both had peace about that. So we went back home to raise our support, packed up everything. We moved all of our belongings to Arizona and put it in a hogan, which is a Navajo structure for home. And then we took off to Ohio to start raising support. And we lived in the East for 1.5 years until the director called and said, there's enough money in your account that you can come. And instead of putting you in Flagstaff, we'll put you in Hard Rock because you won't have to pay for your housing there and the money will stretch farther. And that was what we knew, that's where we knew we belonged anyway. So we were rejoicing in that. And so we packed up and we headed to Arizona. So we've been here for 27 years now. We started out at the mission, living on a mission compound, and then after 6.5 years, the organization decided they were going to move all the missionaries out and transition the compound and the ministry over to the Navajo. At that point, we felt like God didn't want us to leave Hard Rock. We had just barely begun developing relationships, because it takes a very long time to develop relationships with Native American people. There are huge trust issues, and they have a great deal of generational symptoms from the oppression of the past and all the wounds that they've gone through. So we decided, well, we're going to step out on faith again. So we'll resign, and we had 5 different Navajo families say, come live on our land, come live near us, get a trailer, come live near us. So we chose to a location where there was no structure. The woman who had that home site lease had not built anything yet. It was untouched, and we decided that would be a good place to start, continue youth ministry, and see where God leads from that. So we did, and 6 months later, we formed Reaching Out with Christ Kingdom Ministries with 2 other missionary couples. And they were working in Hopi, and we're working here in Navajo. And if you don't know how this is set up out here, if you look on a map, you'll see the Navajo reservation, and then right in the center you will see the Hopi reservation. So we're right on the border of Hopi, where we live right now. So we started out with a trailer, no running water, no electricity, cooking on the wood stove. We had a horse, so we were hauling hay and hauling water and hauling wood, to keep warm. It was cold. It was getting into it, starting to winter here. A lot of people don't know that we do get snow here, and it gets really cold here because this is high desert. And the people of the community were elated that we chose to stay. They're used to missionaries coming and staying for a year or 2 and leaving. When we first arrived, one of the Navajo women asked me straight up, how long will you be here? Because if you're only going to be here for a year or 2, I'm not going to bother to get to know you. She was very honest, and that's pretty much how everybody feels. When you are accepted and included in the community, you become family. When you leave, it feels like rejection. And that all goes back to many old wounds of kids being taken off to boarding school from the age of 4 or 5 years old and never seeing their family except for holidays, and sometimes for years even, depending upon what state they were taken to be indoctrinated into the Western culture, learning how to speak English. Our government tried to erase all of their culture out of them, and it was a really harsh atmosphere because many times they tried to beat it out of them. And many kids ran away and froze in the wintertime from these places, and a lot of times when they were caught, they would be chained to the bus and taken back to these schools. It was a horrific time, but being taken out of the home destroyed family units, and kids grew up in more of a military style situation, and they did not have any representation of mother and father for themselves to learn from. And so as a result, when they started their families, they didn't know how to parent. They had no example. All they had was harshness, and sometimes they were harsh with their children. So the pain and the wounding has continued for generations. And this is the norm for them, these behaviors, for many of the families, because they don't know anything else. So for us coming here, we wondered, at least for me personally, I knew what it was like to have a father and a mother. I never was abused, never abandoned. And even though there were hard times growing up, I also learned about living by faith, as Mom and Dad were in full-time ministry. And I learned from their example and how they really trained me. Because I remember Mom took me into the Sunday school classroom, her classroom, when I was 10, to teach me how to teach. Because she recognized that was my spiritual gift, even though I might not have known it. I was too young. But I knew I loved doing it. And so that was also the beginning of teaching me how to teach Bible to the children. And all the way up until where we are today, I'm teaching all ages, preschool all the way up into college, sometimes all at once in the same environment at church, which is just basically a barn with a dirt floor. So I look back at everything that we have been through in life, everything that we've learned how to do, that's all been part of training. And all the hardships that we endured as a married couple and as a small family in Texas, when many times we had no food to put on the table. We had to trust, and God always provided. We never starved. And those are all things that we can relate to with the people out here as well. By staying, they said, now you are one of us. You're living without electric, you're living without running water, just like us. Because at that time, there still were very, very many families out here that had no electric or no running water. But they also all grew up without it. And so they were really happy to see us be willing to live like them. That opened the door to relationships even more, past anything we could have experienced living on a mission compound. To learn the culture directly from them. They didn't hold any secrets from us now. They taught us many things that we had been taught before coming to the mission field by other missionaries that lived out here. We found out they weren't always correct. And that was, so they gave us the truth on many things. Now here, we lived for about 10 years on the home site lease, and we applied for a ministry site because the goal was to produce or to build a youth facility. And that facility was going to be able to accommodate not just weekly events, but also to be able to have retreats and workshops, camps, small camps. This is the vision goal. And so in order to accomplish that, we needed to start small, which would be a one-room structure to at least be able to continue the youth ministry in. It took 3.5 years before the Navajo Nation said yes to us that we could have this 1.5 acre, and it was approved by the community and by the Navajo Nation. And we are also incorporated under the Navajo Nation as well. And we are holding to all the guidelines and rules that they have for us in order to use this land. And it is stated in our contract with them, which is a revocable permit, what we will use the land for. And so there's a long list of activities, including leadership development, worship, and Bible studies, as well as a gymnasium. A gymnasium is the ultimate for us because that's the tool to bring them in. They do not have a place like that to play out here. There's no community center. The boarding school shuts down in the evening, and it's not open for people to use. Basketball is the #1 sport in all of Native America, so it's a huge tool, and that would draw in all ages. And then with people there to minister to them, that's how it's used as a tool, and I think you can see where that can go. And we are on solar power, and we decided that this facility, all the buildings here needed to be as self-sufficient as possible, because when Robin and I are no longer here, the Native people of this community will be running this facility. They will be the ones ministering to their own people. And there's no income out here. Who's going to pay the bill for an electric? So we invested in solar, and it's for long term. Water was harder to get. We had to save for a long time and fundraise for it, but we do now. We've had, I think, running water for about 3 years now, so we no longer have to haul water. And believe me, that was a lot of work when we had work teams with all the people showering and all the water that is used for cement and everything else that goes on here. And so we're very thankful to have running water. And you might ask how we could haul water and still be able to get it out of our faucets. We did have a pump that was solar powered as well to get it into the house. And everybody uses one shower. And even today, everybody's using one shower. And we're very close in the bunkhouse now to have hot water so people can have showers in there. So we started out with the chapel. So this is actually our youth facility. This is where we come together every Sunday night. All the youth come here. We have worship, we play games, and we have teaching. And sometimes we have a movie night as well. So this is where the discipleship is taking place, right here in this room. And then occasionally we will have special events where the whole church will come in. We have gatherings, sunrise service, breakfast, and all kinds of things take place. We have groups that come in and teach. And we try to make sure that they receive information about the culture, about the people here, so that there won't be very many mistakes made that could offend, because this is another country. Navajo land is its country in itself. The people have their own culture, their own government, their own police, their own health department. This is a sovereign nation, yet it is also run by the government at the same time. And all the land here is owned by the government. This is a reservation. And many people don't realize they exist today, but they exist all over this country. And technically, Navajo are prisoner of war. When they were told that they could come back to this land after they had been imprisoned over in New Mexico for several years, they were released to come back here from Fort Sumner to reestablish their lifestyle. And the tribe has blossomed as far as population. They went from back, let's see, what was that, 1861, I think it was, 16,000 people, and now there is close to 370,000 people. And it is a very large reservation as well, the largest, just the Navajo people. Yes, so we needed to establish housing for the work teams and the ministry teams that come here, and we needed to have a bunkhouse for that. So the bunkhouse has the first floor for the women, second floor for the men, and then we have one room, which would be third floor, for a prayer room with windows facing all directions. And we don't have the staircase to the third floor yet. So I haven't been in that room yet, but one day I will be. Navajo people cannot wait to use that room. Okay, next to the bunkhouse would be the workshop. So Robin used to put up his stalls out on the patio, sometimes here in this room, the chapel. You know, he would just move it all over the place, wherever he could find a space to work, and it was frustrating. And then when we'd have, like youth group, he'd have to move everything out. If he happened to be using the first floor of the bunkhouse for a workshop, teams come in, he'd have to move it all out. And so finally, we have a structure that is just a workshop, and he has an office upstairs in that facility with drafting tables so he can draw up plans for anything. We don't know what the future is going to bring. Navajo Nation president was looking at having church groups coming out to the reservation and helping people that didn't have the means to fix their homes, especially the elders. And he was looking for locations where these teams could stay. So our government official from Hard Rock, he is a delegate, would be like a senator, I guess. He approached us and asked if we would be willing, and we said yes. If they need to have a place to lay their head, they can do that here. The bunkhouse is also to be used for women and children that are running from domestic violence. It's a safe place. Nobody knows they're here. Sometimes there'll be a call and I'll go do a rescue. Other times they find their way here on their own, even barefoot. I've had them running barefoot to my front door trying to get away from domestic violence. And we have people that come that are drunk sometimes. We need to have a place to minister to them and for them to lay down their head as well. And so the bunkhouse is used for so many things. And our young people can't wait to have their first camp here and be able to ride their horses over, put the horses in the corral, and spend the night, spend a couple nights, have fellowship, have Bible teaching, play games, and then ride their horses back home. It's uniquely Native, and we want it to be a place where they do feel safe. This is a refuge. This is a place of peace. We don't have any evil spirits here. This is God's place. So the next main building to be constructed will be the youth center with a basketball court. And we were going simple with that idea, like let's just go ahead and get a court in this year and gradually build up around it. That was the idea. But last November, there was a man who came here that was a trainer for the NBA. And he saw the need. He didn't realize there were places like this where we don't have a facility where kids can come and play ball. And since basketball is so important in his life, he grew up in the projects of New Jersey. He knows, and he could relate to a lot of the pain issues, father wounds and such, that our Native kids have issues with in their own lives. And he went back home and he found 2 people who are willing to pay for it. And we're hoping that we can maybe get started on that this year. We'll see how God leads in all of it. We've never experienced working with people like this before and kind of ignorant to it. Don't know what to do, don't know what the first steps should be. But Robin went ahead and has drawn a blueprint according to everything our young people and young adults said they want in a youth facility. So it becomes uniquely theirs. And these men that are supposed to pay for this want to give enough money to pay our local people to build it. That way it's hands-on, and as far as, it'll be theirs. It won't be the missionaries, it won't be the white people's, it'll be theirs, in a place that they can come even as families. And we have several of our young people go on to Bible school, and we have a couple working on their bachelor's degree right now with the intent to come back. How are they going to support themselves? There's no work here. And so an endowment we're hoping to have set up that people can give to so that we can have some form of a salary for the workers for this facility. And they need to be here on a regular basis because the need is great. And Rob and I are getting older now and we can't do it all. And certainly know that we won't be here forever. People that come through Name Rock Ministries do pay a certain amount of money to come, and that money goes towards their food and also for building supplies, whatever project they might be doing. And any of the money that might be left over from that, we use throughout the year to continue buying supplies for whatever is needed for the buildings. Most teams get to mix a little bit with the Navajo people. A few of our Christian people will come and drop in, they get to know them, and they're curious, and they do want to get to know you. And many times we'll have at least one night of Bible study and singing, and they love gatherings like that, so we encourage that. But at some point, there will probably be more ministry teams coming, actually teaching compared to those that are coming now in the building. This is the groundwork right now. This is the process that needs to take place. The physical needs to happen to make way for all the spiritual. But while you're working, if people come alongside to help, as they have sometimes, there you get a connection to minister to the person. And what I usually hear is the teens are the ones that are ministered to. The Navajo people that are willing to come and get to know them, share a bit of their life with them. If you think of us, start praying, because sometimes we're in danger. Sometimes I'm out in the dark, running around on a rescue somewhere, and the enemy doesn't like what we're doing here at all. So pray for us and pray for the people, to keep them safe. There's a lot of witchcraft out here, a lot of fear. All Navajo, unless they're a Christian, everything's rooted in fear. And that's one of the blessings of having this spot here on this hilltop, is people know there's no evil spirit here, and they can come here and not be afraid. And they do. And they can share openly with us what their problems are, knowing there's nothing eavesdropping that will get even with them. And those might be hard things to understand if you're not living with this culture. But this is no different than the same kind of shamanism that takes place in South America and around the world. Satan hasn't thought up anything new. He uses his same tactics everywhere. And fear is what he uses. But love chases away fear. So, teaching them love. And a lot of them have grown up not having anybody say, I love you. Not having anybody put an arm around them in love. A safe love. And so when the little kids come up and throw their arms around me, I let them. Because they need it. They need to be loved. We only have one work team this year, you. And that slows things down. And it's been like that ever since we've been here for 10 years. Sometimes a year with no work team, sometimes one, sometimes three. Robin used to work off the reservation in order for us to survive. And he ministered to the men he worked with, both Hopi and Navajo, when he was out there. And that too, the people said, you're living like us. So many times for years I was here by myself. God's protected us. He's met our needs, but there came a time when we felt like, things aren't moving ahead. This is just too slow. So Robin retired, and we trust the Lord to take care of us, and he has. And it's just a slow process. We use a lot of materials that are thrown away, and we salvage. We go to places like Habitat for Humanities and thrift stores and whatnot, and find things that we know can be used in the buildings. And people may look at the buildings and think, oh wow, it's how extravagant. It's people's throwaways, many of them. And it's uniquely Navajo and Western at the same time. The Navajo people love to come and see how Robin creates with what might seem like nothing. He creates something beautiful. And it inspires them. And his goal is to be able to teach the men woodworking, cabinet making, furniture making one day, so that they can be in their own home, make something that they can sell, maybe off the reservation, and then support their families. The facility itself is in need, and that Robin and I are paying utilities for everything. And so at some point, we probably are going to be needing help along those lines too, to be able to pay to keep this running. Pray for our young people that are going off and getting their training, their Bible schooling. I think it's important today to have that. I am working with older people as well from time to time who feel very insecure that they haven't been to Bible school and feel like they can't serve the Lord because of that. But I can tell them, because I didn't go to Bible school, that's not true. And Christ's disciples did not go to Bible school either. And so that's where we need to be the example for them and teach them. And discipleship is coming alongside and training as you go, watching, listening. And the biggest thing when people come out here too, they need to have their eyes open and their ears open and their mouth shut many times. And you will learn a lot. And you will also, if you are that kind of a person who's willing to listen, someone's going to share with you. It's going to be important to be ready. So I am going to insist that any team that comes out here study generational oppression and what the symptoms are, so they are aware and don't cause more wounding unintentionally. And you must also understand that there's a lack of trust, especially with Anglo people because of pain in the past. So be aware of it, and don't think you can just jump into this environment and be accepted right off the bat. It might not happen. But if God's led you here, and you allow His Spirit to guide you in a relationship with even one Navajo person, He is going to do that. And they are watching you now as you build here. They're watching to see which teams come back, because they look at that and they say, they care. They keep coming back. They'll start to listen to you. So I look at your team even now. You're building, you've been coming out here and working your hearts out and getting sunburned and windburned. And I know it's hard. It's not an environment you come from. You're going to be coming here and you're going to be sharing Christ. You're going to be building up these believers that are here. This is what they need. They need encouragement. Many of them have family members that push them away because they're Christians and they won't go to the ceremonies anymore. They need encouragement. So that's my prayer. God sends the right people. Not people that just want to come out and have a missionary experience, but people that want to come out and just love, share Christ's love with people.